The 2020 Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom has come to a close. More than 50 nations and international organizations convened in the virtual event hosted by the Polish government. This being the first year it was not hosted in the United States. And while religious freedom victories were celebrated, a key focus was put on China and their many human rights abuses. The communist regime says they are moving away from their poorly maintained detention facilities that target Uyghur Muslims, but their proposed alternative could be just as crippling. Joining me now to talk about this and more is the Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, our good friend Sam Brownback. Ambassador, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony. Always good to join you.
Well, it was an easy commute to Poland this year, wasn't it?
It was. I was hoping to be over there, but they've been having a spike of COVID, and so it didn't work out. What I was really pleased about is now we've had the third annual of these. The Secretary Pompeo tasked me saying I want to make sure that these continue on an annual basis. So now they've gone overseas. Poland hosted it. Brazil announced they're going to host the one next year. So that we have this annual conclave of people globally pushing for religious freedom, because it is a global topic, and it's one we're seeing some successes, but boy, do we need a lot of effort in this space.
Now, I will say, Ambassador, they sometimes refer back to your title as senator. For those that don't know, Ambassador Brownback was senator of Kansas. Prior to that, he was a congressman from Kansas. But in between, he was also governor of Kansas. Is there any title you haven't carried, Sam?
Well, my favorite one is Grandpa. I've got 6 grandchildren, so that's the one I'm working on the most. I like the best.
You know, I haven't experienced that one yet, but everybody tells me it's a good one.
It's a great one.
But before I chase rabbits there or grandkids, I was at first a little disappointed when it was announced that the Ministerial was going to go overseas, although Poland's great. I was over in Poland, I guess, the beginning of the year for a conference speaking over there on religious freedom in my capacity as chairman of USERF. But I was a little concerned it was going out, but now I see it as a good thing because I think this helps solidify it as an international event.
It does, and it makes the movement go global. And this administration has been fantastic on religious freedom. They put more effort into this topic than probably all the prior administrations combined. And it shows. We now have a global movement on religious freedom. We have an annual gathering of this taking place. We now have an alliance of 32 nations that are willing to be the tip of the spear and push on these topics as they come up in various venues around the world. I mean, we have our issues here at home, obviously, but this is really key that there is now a global religious freedom movement that wasn't there prior to this administration.
Without question, this administration has done more to advance religious freedom internationally. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo doing an outstanding job of making this the number one foreign policy objective of this State Department, of course, that promoted by the president as well. So before I get to China and what's happening there, you feel pretty confident that regardless of what may be the outcome of this contested election, that the Ministerial will go forward in future years?
I do. As I said yesterday, Brazil announced that they will host the Ministerial in 2021. We're already talking to another country about hosting in 2022. Then you've got all these religious freedom roundtables around the world. And, you know, honestly, Tony, it's really like this persecution has been going on for some period of time. Christian persecutions at the highest level in human history. It's like the world didn't even know it existed, or that we've turned over this rock or lifted the carpet up. And here are all these poor people being persecuted and being sent to jail and killed simply for peacefully practicing their faith. And as we've drawn attention to that around the world, much of the world has said, yes, that is going, and we should be standing up against this. And so we're seeing a lot more action because the attention has finally come to this area.
I would think that the United Arab Emirates would be a good spot. They've been very eager to showcase not only their country, but their embracing of religious tolerance.
They would be. They've got to repeal their apostasy and blasphemy laws. They still have those, and that's the problem in a lot of the Islamic world.
Be a good motivation.
Laws.
Be a good motivation for
Well,
them to repeal.
Well, that's a good thought. Maybe that's the way we present it to them. But they have been outstanding, honestly, of really opening up in this space, and they've been a lead country in that Islamic world, which has been so tough. Really, the North Africa, Middle East, most of the Christians have been driven out, but now in some of these countries, they're being invited back in of sorts.
Yeah, there's some very encouraging things, and I think that you're smart to go ahead and line up these other countries to host this ministerial so that this issue continues to march forward and people all around the world have the benefit of experiencing freedom of religion. Let's go to China, because you have expressed concern. China, a lot of international pressure on their quote unquote concentration camps where they've been or work camps, re-education camps, whatever you want to call them, where they've had the Uyghur Muslims. But now they're if they move to something, it's a move to technology, which is just as repressive in many ways.
I think over the longer term, Tony, it's worse. I've talked to people, Chinese secondhand, because in many cases they aren't willing to talk to me in person because they're afraid that they'll be found out and locked up. But a number of the Chinese religious people are more concerned about this than during Mao's great cultural revolution and all the problems that they experienced then, because this one is so pernicious and pervasive. These cameras and artificial intelligence systems and facial recognition, and it's going to isolate people from being able to be a part of the functioning society, and it's going to drive other people away from being connected to anybody that's a religious adherent. I think this is the future of oppression, and unfortunately, it is here now.
Well, the other aspect of this is that type of repression can be exported, whereas it's kind of hard to export the concentration camps, the re-education camps, but this technology can be used by other totalitarian regimes.
And it's not that expensive once you get the data and the system set up. It's not that hard, and yet you can virtually control people's participation in the economy, and particularly if they're going to electronic money in places,
right.
You can shut their money off where they can't even buy or sell.
Well,
if they practice their faith.
In China, I mean that is actually happening in a lot of places where they've gone cashless, and then they can control purchases using that social credit score.
It is, and that's to me. So it's so scary. And here, Tony, too, the interesting thing about it, it's happening in one of the most remote places in the world is where it started, in a place that's probably one of the furthest from an ocean that you can be in, on this earth. And here's where they're perfecting that system of controlling people and then being able to export the system to totalitarian regimes or places that want to try to use it. This one really, really concerns me and has since I've first seen it.
Yeah, and before long they'll be making everybody wear masks too. But in all seriousness, explain to our listeners what the social credit score is and how that functions and how China's using that.
Yeah, what happens is they enact a social credit score system, and I think the best way for people to think about it is your own credit score. And if you have a bad debt somewhere, if somebody files bankruptcy or this or that, your credit score goes down. Your social credit score is what the Chinese Communist Party wants to value or devalue. And so in their case, if you go to church, you get marked down on your social credit score. If you're seen as a religious adherent that is sincere about your faith, you get further marked down. And then you get a low social credit score that they can keep you from getting certain apartments, getting your kids into certain schools, being able to travel at all inside or certainly outside of China. So they can then start to really control your movement and your ability to function in this culture. And anybody that pings you on your cell phone, which they can track that, then too, you start to get marked down by having a bad social credit score of somebody that's worse than you in their minds.
So it is a form of ostracizing these individuals, almost creating this leper colony within the within the society.
That's a good way of looking at it. It's kind of an electronic colony, and then your friends and your family start pushing on you, saying, "Will you stop going to church? You're hurting me." Right. And then they have all this social.
So they do the contract.
Exclusion.
They do the contact tracking. I mean, it's frightening, and but I tell you, I think it's been more difficult for them to advance it because of the work that you, Secretary Pompeo, and President Trump have done in advancing religious freedom. So, Ambassador, thank you for joining us, and again, thank you for the outstanding job you've done as Ambassador of International Religious Freedom.
Thanks, Tony. God bless you. Take
All right.
care.
All right, Sam Brownback, Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom.